everybody, and welcome today to BIPOC, Beautiful, Intelligent People of Color. So I'm here today with one of my favorite humans, Mr. Rob Cook. I have the pleasure of talking with him so you guys can get to know him a little better. So hi, Rob. How are you doing today?
What's going on, D? Super excited to be here. Yeah. That's pretty much what's all going on. Yeah, I love being on
Great.
your stuff. Yeah, I love doing anything. Um, Being interviewed by you is always fun. So yeah, I'm excited.
Well, likewise, likewise. I've learned a lot being interviewed by you. So I'm going to kick us off with the fact that one of the ways I learned about BIPOC, all the wonderful work that they're doing, was through you. So really excited about it and know quite what it was at the time. But when I got a chance to go and be present and really see the good work that they were doing and how they were bringing all people together, not just people of color, as I did want to be a part of it. So what has that experience been like for you? Because I know you were in there before I started being in there. So what was that experience like for you?
Well, the experience of the whole BIPOC group has been life changing just from the beginning. So how I even became a part of the group was um, after the George Floyd assassination. There was a lot of, I guess you would say, tense conversations about how the society or country should handle this event. And my mentor, Michael Neal, was also having those same question. Him being a white male here in the United States, and I remember him saying, "Hey, I need to do some." And I was like, right now, homie, just be quiet. Like, just listen, man. Like, don't wade out there because things are real tense right now. And he was like, good point. So we would walk his dogs and we would have these deep conversations about shifting it. And I remember after that he came, he said, I think it's about time we could talk about it. And maybe a couple weeks, maybe a month had passed at that point, and we did a podcast together and talked about it. And I guess from that, the way we approached the topic of race, and the way we were looking at it with what it could potentially be and not what it has been to us in a sense. Um, what happened was Christine Heath, who was a 3PGC board member at the time, then contacted Michael to reach out. Now, she's worked with Michael for years and had known him, previously, but I had never met her before. But I was kind of aware of who she was. She was an original student of Sydney Banks and things like that, and I knew she lived in Hawaii. And she reached out to me and said, hey, we're doing these listening groups. And what we're doing is we're trying to see where we've had blind spots within our own community and how we could just listen and make some change. And so the first listening group was the BIPOC group. And what that entailed was that it was an open invitation from anybody that wanted to come share their experience of what it felt like being Black while teaching the principles in whatever community, whether in the coaching, psychology world, or community service, social psychologist, whatever, social worker, psychologist. And what happened there, Danielle, was super interesting. It was, at first, it was a lot of tension. Or it was tense feel. Maybe that's the wrong word. Tension, tense feel. And it was a lot of uncertainty. It was a lot of lack of trust. And what I watched was essentially what happens when you implement a few things. When you put a felt sense of safety in a room for the human beings that are there, they begin to express themselves. So their voice begins to be heard, begins to become part of the collective, the bigger picture. And as a result of their voice being seen and heard, they typically then start engaging in life in a way they've never done before. And I watched the group do it. I watched us go from barely even want to be on it, not be on it, don't want to talk to the people, don't want to bring up the stories, to safe space, to becoming its own organization, to now the great work that it's doing. Yeah, being there for the transformation has been amazing.
Wow. I love that. Well, I'm glad to be a part of it.
Yeah.
So let's go back, and if you don't mind, I'm gonna get personal for a moment.
Oh, do that.
So back to when you were growing up, and I know you're from Alabama. What was your experience like being a man of color up there and encountering the things that you encountered?
The odd thing And this is where it gets funny for me in my experience of life.
Hmm.
So when I grew up in the area of Birmingham I grew up in, we didn't have many whites around us. So I didn't grow up interacting with a lot of white people. Like, so most of anything that I had, good or bad, it came from interacting with somebody that looked like me. But I do remember a few times when I've got into conflicts with police officers and things because I was a funny kid. I'll say it that way. The aggression that I received from the police officers, I once said was racism until I entered the military, became a military policeman, went through law enforcement academy, police academy myself, and realized, oh, that wasn't racist at all. And so what happened though was that when I got into the military, my first deployment, I was discriminated against. There was a hatred, and there were people who wanted to take my life simply because I was American.
Mm.
Point blank. No other reason. And the reason I know it didn't matter about the color of my skin is because the guy next to me who was just as scared was white. But he was American, so he was just as much danger as I was. So now coming back to America after experiencing that was like, okay, yeah, I know what that feels like. Because I never really had the passion when people were saying racism, and want to fight it. I was just like, like, fuck them, fuck up. Like, you know what I mean? It never really, oh, wait, can I say that on it? I don't know if I want, it really wasn't a thing. Like, we just knew we fought with other schools. We didn't mess with them. They didn't mess with us. You don't talk, like, it wasn't a problem. It was just a way of life at first. It wasn't until I got into the military and came back to see, oh no, that's a problem. And why I say it's a problem and a little bit different is because racism, as I understand it, is when it is seeped into the organization and when it is seeped into the structure and the fabric of society where the color of my skin doesn't allow me to experience the same things. Like it's a hatred. Now, coincidentally, I also stayed about 2 miles from the 16th Street Baptist Church, which was blown up by the domestic terrorist organization known as the Ku Klux Klan that killed 4 young black schoolgirls who just so happened to be friends of and students of Condoleezza Rice's father. So I had things like that happen within my environment to show hatred, but somebody saying something that culturally was probably a prejudice or something, I never took that as racism because I've seen people die for this. Like my
Yeah.
aunts were there for, fighting through Jim Crow laws. The park where they released the dogs, Bull Connor released the dogs on the sit-ins. That's like right down the street from the house.
Wow.
And then when you go through the park now, that's across from the African American Museum, they have dog statues that are launching into the walkway. So you literally have to duck around the dog to walk the path through the park. To get how when they release the dogs on them, for you to feel it throughout the walk of the park. It's insane.
Wow.
Yeah,
That is.
yeah. So again, I experienced it much different. I see the importance of it. Well, let me not say I don't see the importance of racism. I see the importance of combating racism. You
Right.
know, I see the importance
Yeah.
of ensuring that there should be no bias or judgment on you based off the color of your skin, your ethnicity, your nationality, your gender, and I could go on and on. So yeah, Alabama was an interesting time for me, and it also was I'll say was slightly different because my family, in their reasoning for whatever reason, considered me the one that would get out, that would make it, that would do whatever. And so my aunts would always tell me when I would try to get caught up in this and want to do the fighting and all that, it's like, nah, baby, that's not gonna be you. You're gonna figure it out. Try like don't get into that. That's not for you. And I'm like, well, my little cousin's in it. Like, my cousin's in, like, what? Like, what do you mean? I
Yeah,
wanted to take that up too, but they was like, nah, it's something different. So yeah.
yeah. You know, when you're talking about some of these things in Alabama, I realized like, wow, like you around some real history. Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
not saying that there's not history where I'm from in Atlanta, but
Oh yeah.
no, yeah, when you talk about your aunties and what they experienced, and then right down the street from the church and everything, yeah,
Oh yeah.
that's powerful. But you have this story that I've heard you share on platforms from time to time. Whenever I hear it, it always touches my heart because it goes beyond racism and color and conditioning and all the things that we're talking about today. So I'm gonna let you tell it, but I'm just gonna bring it up. It's the story that you talk about with you, someone you were stationed with, and I think it was when you were deployed, and he was from Alabama and he was white.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And do you mind sharing that
Yeah, yeah.
story?
So
All right.
when I was leaving the Pentagon, I got tapped to go down to Special Operations to do protection for the commander of Special Operations. And when I was arriving new to the team, rank-wise, I was supposed to be included into the leadership team. But when I got there, it was a change. Okay, no biggie. But I was paired with another guy who was from Alabama. And he was the team leader. And then after I followed him for a while, they would make me a team leader. Now, they put us together for one reason and one reason only. We were both from Alabama. When we saw each other, we knew we were both from the parts of Alabama that neither one of us could go on to. Like, we knew that instantly. What happened was so interesting because, like I said, when we got abroad and the mission that we did, people were actively trying to harm us. Me and him got very close. Like, there was years in my life where I didn't trust another individual more than I trusted him to cover me, to watch my back. And the same with him. At one point, his wife had such an attitude that when she came to functions and stuff, and they'd be asking questions, she'd be like, ask his real girlfriend or wife, because they always together, because we're traveling 200 some days a year together. I was the one who went to this dude's sleep apnea surgery appointment because I can hear him in the next hotel room because he messing with my sleep. Like, that's how much we were together. He taught me a lot of stuff, and I'm sure I probably taught him stuff. But man, were we polar opposites when it came to just that thing about race. But he loved his family like I love my family. He was doing for his kids what he thought was the best for them, and the same with me. And what ended up, honestly, the first fabric pool that started, making things difficult was we both sent our daughters to private schools. And the school that they were at thought, well, since y'all daddies are so close, we should put y'all together. And so they forced our daughters together for them to quickly realize, no, we ain't the same. Which caused the wives then, the mothers who are back home, to handle it. And they came together and it's like, oh, we definitely ain't the same, boo-boo. And then we're on a mission and both our phones are blowing up. His wife calling him, screaming about my wife. And my wife at the time calling me, screaming about his wife. And we like looking at each other like, God, bro, like, what the fuck? Right? And we just, it just fizzled from there. But again, when we were outside the U.S., you couldn't separate us, man. Like I said, I done been to medical surgeries with this guy before. There was other times he's had surgery that I was there with him for missions he got sick on in like Korea and shit. And it was super sad though when we got back here we had to play that game, or that game affected our lives. But yeah, man, I don't think I trusted anybody more than that, because I'd seen, like, when we used to train, he's literally, like, we're running and doing stuff, he's literally put a rifle on, like, past my shoulder to hit a target before. Like, that's,
Wow.
yeah, like, that's how his shooting. Now he had like 50
Mm.
guns all over the house. Like his shooting was none other. Like he was straight. I think I can't. Don't quote me on this, but I think before he got to the team in special operations protection wise, that he might have been a Marine sniper or something in that thing, because his ability to shoot a weapon was I don't think I've ever seen anything like it in all of my 21 years.
But it goes to show the respect of life that he had
Yeah.
for your life and vice versa.
Yeah.
And it went past, I'm from here,
Oh
you
yeah.
from
Most
there, we're
definitely.
not supposed to
Mm-hmm.
talk, and we two different colors and
Oh
all of
yeah.
that. And I think that's why that story always hits me whenever I hear it, because it's an example of going past all that, like all that, and it's not to say that, like you said, it doesn't matter, because it does matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
It's very
because it
important to
matters
a
how
lot of
people are
people.
treated.
Absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It's very important to a lot of people.
It just goes to show that love surpasses all of that,
Yeah.
blows right past that.
Uh-uh.
Now, talking about the principles and this understanding with Sydney Bank, has that affected the way you connect with people of different colors and people of different nationalities, and
Yeah,
how does that affect your relationship?
it's been learning the principles for me has been everything for relationships, because what I got most from it was that if I'm not broken and innately I have well-being, that's inside of me, then I really don't have to play to the tunes of any of or a lot of this that's out there. And what I mean by that is I do remember, like there's a lot of times actually on Capitol Hill, inside the Pentagon, inside special operations, where I was the only black man in the room. Several times. So it's never been an uncomfort. That's never been a discomfort for me. There's several times that I've had people amazed at my so-called articulation of the English language, or amazed that I have a degree, or that I can't, where I come from. And here's a funny story. We had a mission to Talladega, the NASCAR Talladega. And so obviously, since it was in Alabama, that they gave me that mission so I can go see my family during the advance work. But the teammate they gave me was an Asian guy. And so I was like, okay, well, I don't care about the teammate because I'm going to see my family. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
So we do our first day. We're there for 3 days before the boss gets there to do his piece. So first day, I work from sun up to sundown. Like, he's like, hey, man, you want to grab something to eat? I was like, no, man, I want to get all this done because I'm going to see my family. And so he never says anything. He's like, all right, cool. So we pushed through work the whole day. And I was like, all right, man, I'm about to head off, see my family. He was like, oh, I want to go. And I was like, bro, like, you cool? Like, you're my teammate. I love, like, but I can't take you home, bro. Like, I can't, like, it's not safe. Like, it's not. He was like, Rob, stop. Like, come on, it can't be that bad. And I was like, you really have no idea where you are, huh? And so I was just like, oh, poor guy. Okay, like, all right. So, because I'm also thinking about my job too. Like, can I get in trouble for this? All that. So we leaving out of Talladega. And now, before, when we're working as law enforcement agents, everything's chill. We just doing our thing. We're in our zone. Now we're in the kind of traffic trying to get out of town to get on the highway. And I pull over and hit my lights because we got lights on our security vehicle. One of the cops walks over. This is no shit. He looks in the car, then he runs down, looks over at my partner, looks back at me. And I said, yeah, man. I said, we trying to really get, you mind if I hit the light, stay in the emergency lane, keep it down? He looked at both of us and was like, nah, you're going to have to wait in line like everybody else. And just turned around and walked off. And so Dave was like, wow, we showed him our badges. And I was like, yeah, don't. We're in a different town, buddy. We're in a different town, right?
Yeah.
We get home to my town. I go through where I grew up first. Dave pulls his sidearm out and he says to me, why are we here, Rob? Like, and he's panning left and right like we in a shoot house at training. Like, he's like, what are we doing here? I was like, oh, that's my little cousin house. I'll be right back. He's like, no, I'm going too. Like, he was like on my hip, everything. So of course they like, who that? They screaming in the, like, who that? Rah, rah, who that with you? And I'm like, and he is just beat red. So I was like, let me get him out of here, try to get to my aunt's house. Get to my family's house, and they're like, oh my God, he's so cute. Does he want something to drink? And I'm like, ask him. He's right there. Like, they're just like, would you like Jews? Like, he's like an alien. It was the
Mhm.
funniest thing in the world because they never really interacted like that with somebody. And I was just like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job. They're going to kick me out of the Pentagon. They're going to call me racist. Like, I'm just thinking the worst, right? Well, you know how in the military, people kind of drop their baggage and they become a team. Well, we used to have this thing we would say on the teams. It's like, nah, that's your people. That ain't my people. Well, in the team context, that was cool. One of my sisters were talking, and Dave said, them your people. The whole house goes,
Ooh.
my mom, like, I'm talking about the whole house went quiet. And you talk about had to clean up real. I think that's the fastest mop, bleach. I cleaned that up. I was like, Dave, that is not what he means. And so when he sees me answering, he starts to realize, like, no, I love you. It was so funny. Like, he was like, that was not disrespect. I'm so sorry. It was hilarious. But after that, now we go back. Do you know my family talked about that guy for like 3 years? Hey, one more boy, man. He's so cool. I was like, y'all didn't even talk to the dude. What are you talking about? What? How is he your boy? And I was like, oh man, I love talking to him. And I was like, wow. But that's when I learned they haven't been around different cultures in a long time. They weren't prejudiced. They didn't dislike him. They weren't evil. You know, my mom was trying to make sure he ate. Do you like chicken? You
That's
you
funny.
know what I mean? Like, even Chris, my brother, his youngest son, they were playing, and the basketball rolled over by Dave's foot, and CJ runs over and stops almost like he saw a ghost. And he kind of look at Dave, kind of look at the ball and point like, can you just kick the ball over here? And Dave kicks the ball. He picks it up and run back to the kids. But he wouldn't go all the way next to his chair and pick it up next to her. Like that was too scary for him. So yeah,
Wow.
exactly. Like it wasn't, I didn't grow up with, like, in my experience, racism more so just only being around black people. So I had no other concept of how other people or things did or move. I thought everybody, when you got upset, just fight. And you figured out the winner of the argument is the person standing after the fight. I thought everybody lived like that. I thought my mom punched him in the chest. I thought everybody dad wasn't there in the beginning. I thought, you know what I mean? Like, that was just
Yeah.
how life was. Now I just know that's not true.
Right.
Yeah.
And what's funny is you helped me to see some things that weren't.
Yeah.
So it's always interesting to me because I remember our conversation, when you were coaching me in terms of first came into the community and
What I ain't
first was being
gonna do
exposed to the
is
principles.
what I ain't gonna do. What I ain't gonna do.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that part too, but that's not what I was about to say. Thank you though. But yes, that part too. So, and he made me eat those words, y'all, by the way. But anyway, so no, there was a time where when I first came into the community, I didn't see people that looked like you or me.
Mm-hmm.
I was alarmed because although you, like you were saying earlier, you were used to being the only person of color sometimes in your environment, I was not.
Mm-hmm.
How I grew up in Georgia, no, you do not want to be the only
Yeah,
person of
yeah,
color
yeah, yeah.
in a room. Like you're going to go to hypervigilant mode.
That's
Like,
not a safe
okay, no, I
space.
need to get out of here.
Yeah, that's not a
Right,
safe
right.
space. Yeah, yeah.
So, saying that to you, like, where the people of color, something's wrong, and this is, I'm just going up, and you were like, no, they're there. You just haven't met them yet, or you don't see them yet.
Yeah.
I remember what struck me the most about that conversation is you were like, you're going to meet them, but one day you'll get to the point where it doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember over time, there were a lot of times where, yeah, I was the only person of color in an environment, whether that be the only female of color or person of color, period. One day it just didn't matter. I was still connecting with everybody, still finding things in common with everybody. There was nobody get a big deal like, oh, there goes the black person. It wasn't
We
any of
got
that.
one.
Right, right. Thing that normally would spin out in my mind in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
That's not to say that, like, I don't understand that there's times in different environments
Mm-hmm.
where, yeah, you do want to be aware
Mm-hmm.
because everybody doesn't mean you well, you know? But experiencing that has helped me have a broader view of this whole us versus them and them versus us
Oh yeah.
and how we're different and we're not the same and all the separation
Yeah.
when I learned that that's an illusion. So,
You need that for the
yeah,
story to go,
right.
because some of the, like, racism as I see it is if you're on the ground bleeding to death and a person from a race that you are racist against comes up, you rather die than let that person help you. That's what I'm talking about, the hatred of it. And I
Yeah.
don't see that happening. When folks bleeding out, they be like, who? Black guy, white guy, Hispanic guy? I don't give a damn who you is. Come help me stop bleeding. All right? And for me, I have had the privilege of having the full circle experience. So I had all of the perceived thoughts about how white people treat black people in my head. And I remember talking to Michael one day, and I was like, man, you just don't get it. And this is before it was still a deal to me at this point, right? And I was like, you just don't get it. And he was like, what do you mean? I said, well, like, I mean, you white, you don't get it. I'm black. He's like, duh. And I was like, he says, well, Rob, what do you think is going to happen? He said, when we start going places, and he says, and I put you on stage in front of all white people, what's going to happen? And I go, man, phew. I was like, well, they're going to want to know my education level. They're going to want to know if I ever been to jail. They're going to want to know who am I to be up here teaching? How did I get here? How much money and he just lets me go for a while. Like I'm probably at question 15 before he go like, damn. Like, I had all of this in my head. And he was like, he started that smile. He got that damn Mr. Rogers smile he got. And he hit me. He hit me with that smile. And I was like, here it comes. He says, He says, that's not what white people would be thinking, Rob. He said, that's what those white people are thinking. And it was at the moment I realized I was interacting with white people based off that image in my head of them, not actually them. Right? Fast forward
Right.
3 years after that, I get a call from a couple in Ireland that said, we've heard you speak. We absolutely love you. And we want to bring you to speak at our national conference in Ireland. Now, I'd never been to Ireland before, but I figured somebody there had a 10. Somebody. I figured one person maybe, was one maybe, right? I knew nothing about Ireland, right? I get on this call and I'm looking at the number. The number down at the bottom is like 118, 119. And I'm going through the pictures. I am the only person of color on this call. And I'm talking about visibly, like I'm light skinned. So in some areas of the world, I ain't even really considered a person of color because I'm light skinned, right? So I don't even want to get into that. But imagine me being as contrast to the crowd as my shirt is. That's how dark. I was the darkest thing there. I'm about 5 minutes, 6 minutes into my speech, and all these hearts start coming over in the chat. They just popping up. Like boom, boom. So much to the fact I thought like, okay, did somebody say something? And they all commented off what they said? Like, I'm really like, because this is a lot of chat march going. I finally finished speaking. The event planner comes back. She does some few things. And so I have about a few minutes to go through the chat before we do Q&A. When I go through the chat, no one asks none of those questions I asked him. They were only statement was like, oh my God, this guy's so authentic. Oh my God, like we should have had him last year. Oh my God, I love what he's sharing. What's his name again? Like it was none of the stuff I thought. And I was the only black person around at least 120 people who were white. And not only were they white, they weren't even American. So that was my other sense of protection, right? And it
Yeah.
was like, oh my God, he's right. I got an image of white people in my head, which is actually, if you think about it now, hindsight, looking at the question, here I am, black man, telling white man how white people are, which is the same thing. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's the same thing people get upset about when white people tell black people how. It was just like, I did it too. It was like, no, I know white people. White people do. He's like, I'm white. You know, like I'm white. And I say the same thing. We like black people say, I'm black. You can't tell I'm black. You can't tell me that. So I didn't think about that now, but yeah, I guess it was pretty humorous to him for me to tell him what his experience is like and vice versa. But that was huge for me though. And that showed me that without the hatred or without the narratives of what I believe about prejudices or even cultural differences, without those narratives being present, then I don't have something that blocks me from loving the other human being. You know?
Well, I'm glad you touched on love. I was just about to ask you a question
Uh,
dealing with that.
uh,
Before we go today, when we talk about and think about the George Floyd, the Trayvon Martins, the Sonya Massey, Breonna Taylors, and I can go on and on and on all day.
mhm.
When we see that, feel that, talk about it, how do you feel we can all come together, as humans to help um, show a different side of humanity, to help, I'm unrealistic. I know we're not going to get rid of racism overnight. What are the ways that you feel like, in regards to when you see stuff like that and hear stuff like that, how does that take that and use that with your relationship with other cultures in order for them to connect with you and for us to move past that?
Yeah. Uh, Here's what I do. The first thing I remember realizing about wanting to make change and impact in the world is that I had to be different than the change or the impact that I wanted to create. And what I mean by that was I had so many times can recall myself being in a good mood or feeling good and having a great day. A person at the food restaurant that I'm going to is having a bad day and says something to me in their bad moment that has now wrecked my whole day. Right? Like, and so now, well, you done made me mad. Fuck you. I'm mad. And so now I'm going to go back at you with the same behavior that you came back at me with, because now you done made me mad. I always saw that as two peas in the same pot. Like, you were just arguing different things. Like, you have the Crips, who are a very notably notorious street gang, and you have the Bloods. But if I take all their bandanas away and just put them in the field, you will not be able to tell the difference in the demographic of the human being. And that's what I started. I didn't want to be the same. So to your point of love, I believe racism is a hatred. So at no point can I meet or attempt to deal with hatred in hatred.
Mm.
Because I'm just like them. That's just like the people when I know you grew up in the church. You know them people that super sanctified in the church and ain't about shit when they step out, right? You're like, okay, that's what I see advocates for racism that lead in hatred. I'm like,
Mm.
y'all are the same. Like, for it to be, in my opinion, a change or an abrupt, I have to see something that stops the normal rhythm of the narrative. And that is support. That is love. That is a safe environment. Because wait, what's this? If nothing, it stops you for a minute because you're not used to it. So my way of combating racism, my way of combating sexism, my way of combating domestic abuse, my way of combating um, violence against men, women, infants, children, whatever the case may be, is trying my best to see the God in the person across from me long enough for it to bounce back as a reflection for them to see it. Because I too was a monster at some point in my life. I too was considered a bigot. I too was considered someone who was responsible for silencing voices that should be heard. And that's what changed me. And so if you would have came to me when I was in those modes anywhere close to the type of energy I had, the fuck? I'm ready to fight. Get out my face trying to talk to me about some shit. And it was because you had the same energy as I did. It felt like judgment. It's like, you the same. You hate them like I hate them. You're talking about some love the other side, and you hate them just like I hate them. And it was like, oh, if I want to really make change, I can't hate them. I got to get rid of them altogether, actually. You know, and that most people, when they hear that, means, oh, well, you just out there willing and nilly. Anything can happen to you. Not true. Not true. You know, I'm still just as able to get myself in a position to protect myself as I was then. Actually, I think I feel better about it now because my senses are wide open to listening to the environment. I have more tools available to me now as a result of understanding the principles. I know I can listen.
Yeah.
You know, so when you don't know that those things are potential solutions to problems, then you go. I remember once talking to my brother, my younger brother, and he said, "Wait, you could just talk that out?" And I was telling him about a disagreement I was having with a business teammate, and he was like, "You could just talk that out?" I was like, "Yeah, we just talked it out." He was like, "Man, you made it." And I'm like, "What?" Like, just clueless to what he's saying. He was like, "You made it." And I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Bro, you in an environment where you could talk things out as a solution." He said, "We don't do that." He said, "It has to go to fighting or shooting down here." Like trying to talk it through was seen as a weakness.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, whoa. But again, different. It made him recognize it. It made him start asking questions. It made him start shifting the way he saw. Just because you argue with the person of a different color doesn't make it a race issue. Because you argue with people of the same color. So it's an argument. Yeah, you know. Now, again, as I say all that, even to those who are racist, okay. Okay. Like, okay. It's nothing I can do. Like, okay. Like, you know what I mean? You got your reasonings for whatever your reasonings are. Because I had my reasonings. And I
Right.
wasn't willing to drop them come hell and high water. Off nothing you told me. But once I start seeing it, once I start feeling it, it became a no-brainer. And so I'm really always trying to help people see it or feel it more so than I ever try to say it. Because saying it never worked for me. And I consider myself those guys we're trying to get. The toxic masculinity guys who put this misogynistic view on women, who use them as collateral and property to make themselves feel valued. Yeah, I was a part of all that BS. And you couldn't have told me any different trying to talk to me. But when I start seeing and feeling it, it didn't make sense to be responsible for the harming of anybody's mental capacity anymore. It didn't make sense to create tension and insecurities and unsafe spaces in people's lives when life was already hard fucking enough. Like, why would I contribute to that now? Why would I ever be in any environment where I don't give that environment the very best that I have to offer? Doesn't make sense anymore. Doesn't make sense.
I love it. Knowing you as long as I have, it's
Um,
like I said, it's wonderful to see evolve. from then to now.
Yeah.
Very, very powerful thing to see. So, yeah,
Yeah.
keep up the good work.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being, as usual, authentic and so transparent. For all you guys out there that may be watching and listening, take a look at Intelligent People of Color, BIPOC. We are here for you as a safe space, judgment free, for all colors, all cultures. So thank you again, Rob, and be blessed.